Hello, morning. Thanks for joining me again. We've had a real great week of weather, and come Saturday today, it's absolutely freezing cold and it's windy, and that's British weather for us. However, soldier on we must. Before we get started, I just wanted to say thank you if this is the second or third or fourth time that you visited the channel. Originally, it was just going to be a documentary for myself, just so I could look back, look at the work that was going into the car. But people are starting to like the videos and post comments and things like that. So really appreciate that. Makes it really worthwhile for me, especially because this is a solo outfit. I don't get any help from anyone. So it's really these wobbly sockets. Put it down there. Pillock. Now, in the last video, we was attempting to remove the two 22mm bolts that hold the one side of the engine to the rest of the car, engine mount. Now, I only had a half-banked attempt at taking that off with a Milwaukee impact gun, and I was using, because it's quite difficult to get in there, you can't get a straight bar in there, there is a bit of a kink. I was using one of these, and I was referring to this as a swivel joint. And it's not a swivel joint, it's a union joint, or a universal joint. And the problem I was finding is there's quite a lot of flex in the middle, quite high up from where you're trying to undo it. And so I think a lot of energy was being lost in the extension bars I was using anyway, but also through movement in this. So having a look online, a lot of people rave about these things. These are the wobbly sockets, or the swivel sockets. So I bought a set of 3, they're impact rated, and I've got the 1/2-inch version in here. So we're going to give that a go and see if we can't get those 2 bolts off so we can take off the cam belt finally and get cracking. And that's one hefty bolt out. So there's the other bolt, and you can see from the end of the bolt the amount of punishment it's taken from the impact. I think with a file that should be salvageable, I'm hoping. If not, we might need a trip to the scrapyard and see if we can't get some better condition ones, or just buy some new ones. We'll see. So now what I need to do is just lower the engine. Probably not much, 5mm, something like that. So I've just removed the cam locking tool, just for better access. It is. So many hours have passed since that last clip. I'm struggling to get the belt off that way. It looks like there's plenty of room when you unattach the engine from the engine mount. It looks like there's a lot of room to get the belt through, but as you drop the engine a little bit on this side, it pinches it in other areas, which means I'm really struggling to get the belt through that. So what I've done is I've brought the bent engine back up. I've put in one of the big 22mm bolts back into the mount into the engine just to hold it steady, because what I also noticed is there's quite a lot of movement in the engine when you undo one side of it. So to give myself better access, I am going to attempt to undo the cam gears, take them off, take off the plastic housing surround. That should give me better access, and then I'll have another go at taking off the belt that way I just mentioned by lowering the engine a bit, If not, it looks like I'm going to have to take off the engine mount completely. Now there is a lot of play in the engine mount by the looks of things, so it probably needs replacing anyway. So that's what we're on with now. We've got the cam locking tool fitted again, just to help keep them together, keep them sturdy. So before you start and take the cams off, you want to make sure that you're clear on them being A, timed up, and B, timed up. So we've got the markings in the middle here, so inlet on this side, exhaust on that side, matching up. So it's timed up there, okay. Now we haven't got the belt on, so we haven't got the crankshaft to worry about. I marked up on the casing, plastic case itself here, and also on this cam. And when I take the cams off, I'll do the left one first, I'm going to mark on here an L for left, and I'll also probably mark once the bolt comes out, where the cam is in reference to the camshaft. Just a bit of a Tipex mark, just so I'm clear that when these come to go back on, they're going on in the right way and everything. I'm using a 17mm socket on these cams. I've got the cam tool inserted, the cam locking tool. It's not really the proper tool for this. There is something you can get in here to hold the cam as you undo the centre nut. I don't have that tool, so I'm hoping the tool in the middle, the cam locking tool, will be enough. And I'm just using a torque wrench to get some leverage, and it's so that one's come free. Try this one. And there's the second one. Right. There we go. So I'm going to get a bit of Tipex and I'm going to mark the cam so I can see where it once was. Come on, cam. Oh. There we go. So you can actually see on here, it already says LHB. I'm assuming that means something like left hand bit, as opposed to the right hand bit. I will write an L on here, just in case that one doesn't for some reason. So we've got a mark on there, we've got a mark on there, so when we put this all back together we should be clear on what's going where. Overall condition isn't too bad. I think it'll stand a bit of a clean up. Mark this one right. And then we're clear. Now once you've removed the cams, there's a few bolts holding on this cover. So there's one on the back, just here, and these are 8mm bolts. There's one accessed from underneath, just here. And there is also two below where the cams were as well. So these are you got one of these is the lower one, you got the two beneath each camshaft, and then this one is the rear one, which is a little bit longer. And then this should just come right out. This may require two hands, or not. Here we go. Now when I drop the engine, it shouldn't foul it and I should be able to lift it straight out. But all that is theory. So I'm back with a Milwaukee on the lightest setting. Just going to take this bolt out. lowering, lowering, lowered. So now that should just come straight out. Oh, oh, you beauty! Now that we've taken the timing belt off and I've put one of the bolts back in just to support the engine, it's still on the jack, but just to hold it, because when we start taking the head off, there's going to be quite a bit of movement and to and fro, and it's just to give it that bit more support. What I've also noticed, if you look at the seal around this camshaft, it's seated flush, well, even a little bit inside its housing, whereas this one is protruding, which is probably why there's oil everywhere. Maybe it wasn't installed correctly, maybe it's worked its way free, I'm not entirely sure. So it's just as well we're going to be doing these anyway. Axis is tight as it is. I don't really want to damage any of the metal as I'm taking out the cam seals and putting new ones in, so I'm going to take the head of the car off first and then I'll deal with them separately. So excited. So I'm using an E12 torque socket to get the 10 stretch bolts out. I'm using these on quite a hefty extension. I'm using this on a bit of a ratchety thing. So I'm going to take my time. I'm going to start in this left corner to me and work my way around inwards in a spiral, doing quarter of a turns at a time, just taking my time. Now these are all cracking and pinging. I hope that's a normal thing. This is why I'm taking it very slow. Doing one crack at a time. Now there are a couple of cams in the way. So what I found is that it's actually, rather than grab hold of the rough part of the shaft and risk damaging that, it's easier just to put one of the cam gears back on and turn it by hand. You live and learn. So this isn't a good sound. If you've undone bolts, this isn't a good sound. There we go. So this is the last bolt of the first quarter turn, and what I'm going to do is just go back to number one and do another quarter of the turn all the way around. Oh. There's one. Last one. Last bolt. Okay. Head off moment. Now I'm going to not rock this too crazy because underneath here are some wet liners to the cylinder bores. And if they come free, because they've got a special adhesive that keeps them in place, if they come free, then pretty much the engine is scrap, as far as I'm concerned. So take my time, lift it straight up and off. Well, that went better than expected, to be fair. So I'm not going to take this gasket off and deal with this today. That'll be in the next video. However, upon first inspection, first thing I've noticed is it's not the original head gasket. That is a replacement head gasket, much like the one I'm about to put on it. So someone has changed this in the past, which is interesting. Just looking around, we've got quite a bit of oil down here, so maybe we'll find out more when we take the gasket off to see where, if anywhere, it may have failed. Just looking around the place, there are little bits where stuff's coming away. I don't know if that's carbon or bits of the gasket. It's difficult to tell until it's all cleaned up. It's multi-layer, so when we take it apart, well, I think it's multi-layer. When we take it apart, it might reveal more as to what's been going on. One thing is for certain, there is an awful lot of oil around the place, so something's failed, whether it's the head gasket or whether it's seals within the head, the cam seals. So, but yeah. Right, so the two seals here look slightly different. This one's sticking out quite a bit. I've tried getting it out with my fingers, so it isn't loose as such, but it shouldn't be sticking out that much. So what I plan on doing, and I've seen other people do this on YouTube, is to get a drill and very carefully just drill a small hole into the seal and then screw in a teeny tiny screw just to get some purchase to pull it out. There is a proper tool for this, of course. I don't have it, so this is what we're stuck with. So we'll give it a go. See, it's just started to wander up. Now, underneath here is a spring that goes all the way around, and when you get so far in, you hit the metal of the spring and it can veer off, so you do need to be very careful. You can just start and see the metal underneath. We'll just try the screw and see what happens. That's the worst that could happen. Actually, when you stick the screw in there, it's just hitting the hard metal. This one might come out with a bit of persuading like this, but the other one certainly won't. That's one. Now, just behind here, it's quite oily, there should be a spring And there is a spring. You can't see it. That spring can stretch over time, which means the inside sealing surface doesn't press on and clamp the camshaft quite as well as it should do. But that's one out. Well, that went through the metal this time, so hopefully we can get the screw in this one. Doesn't have to be a lot, just enough. Now I would put another screw in this side, and as sad as this might sound, I don't have another screw. If this is making you nervous, it's making me nervous. I'm hoping sort of pushing it back lifts the bottom off a little. Just being very careful not to damage any of the metal surfaces. There we go. So that's the other one. You can see from where we drilled it in, it's not gone through on any sides or anything, so that's kept that free. Now it's quite oily in here, we want to make sure these are clean. So to do that, obviously got a cloth. And I don't want to get rid of my Tipex marks, because I'll need those when I put the cams back on. But I'm just going to clean it up a little. So I'm just using a standard cotton bud just to get in there and clean the surfaces. Now, I have done quite a bit of reading on whether or not you lube up the seals before they go back in. I've heard people putting Loctite on them, grease, assembly, lube, all sorts of things. Now I am using a couple of guides. So one is a workshop manual, another one is a guide I found online. And the workshop manual definitely says that the seals come pre-waxed and not to use any kind of lubricant. So that's what we're going to be doing. I'm not going to use any lubricant whatsoever. So we're just going to make sure these are clean. So I've got the black ones on the front. Now these, when you look at them, I don't know how well you can see that, but there is a spring just inside there all the way around, and you need to make sure that this side, the one with a bit of a recess, goes in, so you've got the flat side facing front. That should fit over there with a bit of encouragement, just like that. I'm just going to work this way back as evenly as possible and as far as I can. Again, you can get a tool to put these on, which I don't have. So what I am going to do, I'm going to try and use a socket. This is a standard socket out of the kit that I've got. It's a 30mm and it fits over the camshaft nicely up against the seal. So I'm just going to tap that on with a hammer and try and work it back so it's quite even as it does it. So I've got a big 2-pound hammer. No, I'm kidding. Just use the wooden end. What you can do is, if you've got a bolt long enough, you could run that bolt through the socket and then tighten this up, and that would be quite even. However, I don't have a bolt long enough, and the bolt that comes off the cam is quite a bit shorter. So that looks pretty flush to me. That's the front's done. So on this side we've got two plates on the back. In fact, you can even see there's a gap here where you can see the exposed seal. But there's 2 bolts on this one, 2 bolts on this one. Oddly, these are 7mm and these are, I think, 10mm. So yeah, that's 10mm. And weirdly, these are 7mm. Now they are badly corroded, so I don't know whether or not they were once 8mm or something like that, but it's 7 today. Well, that was incredibly loose. Yeah, so I'm going to be using the same technique as before. Just drilling in, getting the screw in, working them way out. Well, that took some doing. Same sort of thing as before, just making sure these are clean and there's nothing on the insides of these or anything. So now we've got both seals, back seals in, and we're just going to clean up these surfaces before we put the covers back on. Just using some Scotch-Brite. Right, so just a case of putting the covers back on, and then then we're onto the head gasket. So one thing I did notice when I turned this over earlier is that part of what I thought was a multi-layer gasket is still attached to the head, and the rest of it is still on the rest of the engine. So it'll be a case of taking that off, having a look at see what we've got, cleaning up the surfaces, and fingers crossed when we put a straight edge across it, feeler gauges, we'll get an idea of whether or not this engine's ever been overheated, and whether or not we can continue to put it back together, or whether it needs any more work. And of course we need to clean up all of this as well. But yeah, so thanks for tuning in, and I'll see you in the next one.